Thank you all for tuning in to episode 1 of the 5th season of the 4th podcast. In this episode, we discussed the history of the war on drugs, Reagan and Nixon and their influence on the war on drugs, and we also had a lively debate about the legalization of drugs in light of modern society.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
I implore each of you to be unyielding and inflexible in your opposition to drugs. Just say no.
Just say no! What's so hard about that?
Ali, what do you think about drugs? What's your experience with drugs, bro?
My experience with drugs, man? No comment. Astaghfirullah. Yeah, I mean, drugs in general, you see, especially within our community, like our local community especially, we see even in middle school now, like drugs are pretty prolific. I remember the middle school I went to personally, after I left it and after I graduated high school, I remember hearing a story about like a 6th grader getting caught with weed in the bathroom. I was like, bro, 6th grade? Like, this kid's 12 years old, you know? But outside of that, it really also depends on the area you're coming from. Because if you're from a lower socioeconomic class, you see a lot of drugs like weed, cocaine, heroin, and then if you
is weed really that bad, bro?
Is weed that bad?
Yeah, bro, is it really that bad?
Hey, don't you know it's a gateway drug?
No. The point I'm trying to get at is like, so we've known that there's been like a war on drugs, for a long time. We've been taught so many things about how drugs are bad, how they'll ruin your life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So my question to you guys is, right, where did this really start? Like, where did this? I'm not advocating for drugs or not advocating for them for or against them. What I'm saying is that our attitude has definitely been shaped against anti-drugs. I mean, I guess recently it's been changing, but for the past 20-30 years we've been vehemently against drugs and crime, right? So where did this?
Well,
where do you guys
link
think
the two
this,
together?
Mm-hmm, exactly. So where do you think we got this idea from, like, to begin with? Like, where did this start? What do you guys think?
Well, I don't think it's a question of what we think. I think we already know, thanks to the research we've been doing. But obviously, it started back with Nixon and Reagan and the war on drugs, right? That's like the beginning of the modern kind of anti-drug movement, probably. And we can see the beginnings of our attitudes towards it, and then also the movement against being hard on drugs kind of stemmed from that time. Like, that was very much the beginning of it.
Yeah, actually, when we were doing research, Nixon actually, he declared the war on drugs. Like, he said that, he said a whole bunch of crazy stuff. He's gonna be like, he like literally officially declared a war on drugs. And what's been happening ever since then is like there's been measures that have been taken place, to make sure that drug use has been curbed, right? It was marijuana at one time, it was crack cocaine at one time. So the thing was that when Nixon declared his war on drugs, he was actually, he wasn't able to fulfill his mission because, as we all know, he got impeached because of the famous Watergate scandal, right? So, who else to, take his place better than Ronald Reagan? And, a lot of people, especially like Republicans, these like Tea Party Republicans, like they love to lick the soles of Ronald Reagan's shoes. Like, they think that he's some sort of like god of the Republican Party, right? But a lot of people don't realize that he was actually not a great guy at all. Like, it's been like recorded and shown that
Oh my man.
him showing saying racist things, like on tape with Richard Nixon. Like they're just going back and forth, trading like slurs, and he compared African Americans to gorillas and monkeys and that sort of thing. So it's like
I think that was normal Africans, not African Americans, right? At the United Nations, yeah, it was African delegations.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
And he mentioned that they were uncomfortable wearing shoes. Like it was. I don't know where this guy was.
Yeah, he was like, they just got out the jungle. Incredibly racist.
Man, it's just like, it kind of shows that like the type of people that the type of person that he was, when he was put into power. Another thing is that like as soon as he got like around that time, right, the early 80s, late 70s, and that sort of time frame, there wasn't much support for anti-drug enforcement. Something like there was like not much funding for the DEA. There was no anti-drug task forces, and the public opinion on drugs was very lax. Like in this, like the 70s are known for like their psychedelics and like their psychedelic music, like the Beatles, or like the hippie movement is known for their drugs and that sort of thing.
I think LSD was legal back then.
There was a consistent. What was that?
Sorry, I said I think LSD was also legal back then.
Yeah.
You
had LSD. You had a few other drugs that people just used to kind of, go to like Woodstock and
have a good time.
Kind of have a good time.
Yeah.
Absolutely hit the wall.
But then also, with like the advent of the 80s, you see like overseas cocaine, or not overseas, but cocaine coming in from international sources into the United States. So Colombian cocaine, for example, into like Miami or into Cali. I think that also played a big role in this advent of Americans taking this new quote unquote new drug by storm. Like I know Miami, for example, and Florida was hit particularly hard. Cali was hit particularly hard. And I think also the language that we use in regards to these drugs, for example, like Nancy Reagan in '86, she mentioned that criminals are ingenious, like they're tricky, right? They work every day to plot a new and better way to steal our children's lives, just as they've done by developing this new drug, crack. For every door that we close, they open a new door to death.
You know something interesting, right? About cocaine. Crack and cocaine are chemically the same exact drug. It's the same exact thing. It's the same exact thing. Like it's the same thing. They just.
Why have I been paying more for cocaine then? I kid, of course.
Man, I can hook you up with my dealer. I think it's your favorite. I mean, what? Whoa. Yeah, but they're actually chemically the same compound, and I think you bring up a good point. Maybe we can discuss that a bit later when it comes to the United States support for how the United States actually imported crack cocaine into their own communities. I guess we can touch on that a little bit later. But there was a significant effort on the part of the Reagan administration to set up these, I mean, essentially propaganda efforts, if you know what I'm saying, right? Like, the Just Say No program, that was the brainchild of, I wouldn't say brainchild, but she was the figurehead of that program. Like that was her project, if you know what I'm saying. And then like you had like all these like anti-drug like education videos that came out, like TV commercials, this and that that are still prevalent to a certain degree to this day.
Yeah, I think something that also to touch up on that, it essentially started like a school to prison pipeline, because when Nancy Reagan in '86 addressed the nation and she said, say yes to your lives and say no to drugs. Like, as you mentioned, that became the whole slogan. Like that became it, And even 20 years later, I remember in elementary school, like talking, like that whole drug-free week or whatever it was. That was literally the slogan the entire week. And for many kids, that was the first time you were actually ever introduced to the idea of drugs as a whole. Like you're a third grader, chilling, 8 years old, going home watching cartoons, and all of a sudden your teacher's like, "Say no to drugs." You know what I'm saying? And it's like, what are drugs in the first place? So that's your first introduction to what drugs are, and then also you've got the Drug Free Schools and Communities Act in '86. Basically, had zero tolerance for any drugs or alcohols found on like public school campuses. So that essentially brought officers into the school, and then you just had kids getting arrested and getting sent straight to prison. It's a complete turn of events, and you even see the effect of that today. Like I think all of us, at least people that went to public school for the most part, you can speak on behalf of individuals literally getting arrested on campus, and you can speak to a little, as you look back on like the funny stories of drug dogs being on campus and sniffing lockers and kids unfortunately getting arrested because of this.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely right. I remember when I was first introduced to what drugs are, they showed us a little video. Like I knew what smoking was, but like that was like the extent of my knowledge to, like illicit substances. I mean, if you can count smoking as one, but um, they actually showed us a video, and they showed us like an animation of some dude taking LSD. I was the most confused I've ever been about anything in my entire life, man. The dude put like a little sticker on his tongue, and then he started like tripping like crazy. He started like watching like animation, bro. I thought it was so cool. I was like, man, if I could take this and start watching cartoons in real life, I want to do that. Like they did do a good job of making that, making those videos. So yeah, I mean, like these drug programs have proven to be ineffective. As you know, that generation of people who were, I mean, we're included in that generation of people who had to go through this anti-drug education. I mean, and I know that we all know someone who does drugs, or never mind. I'm not going to continue that line of questioning. Well,
you either know someone or you know someone that knows someone.
Exactly.
You know
yeah.
Stats say 1 in 3 people do drugs.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Wait.
I don't. But so you started talking about the school to prison pipeline, right? The United States has more prisoners per capita than like any other country. We have straight up 25% of the world's prisoners in a country that's like 5% of the world's population. Do you a big majority of prisoners are like related to drug offenses, as is known, right? Like you were talking about the school to the prison pipeline. So was this an intended consequence of the war on drugs or an unintended consequence?
I'm gonna go out on a limb over here, and I'm gonna say it was definitely intended. I'm gonna be very strong in saying that. Like, it was definitely intended, because the people that are in power, like when we talk about power dynamics and classes in society, when you have like a certain class of people that want to remain in power, the way that they remain in power is by making sure that the people who don't have power remain not having that power. So they implement these systems, like we talk about systemic injustice and systemic racism. Where do you think that comes from? That comes from the will of these ruling people, their will of them wanting to keep a hold of that power. So they implement these systems to subjugate these people. And when we talk about the war on drugs, which is the theme of our discussions for this season, the goal for that, it was implicit. Their implicit goal was to subjugate Black and brown communities, right? Because they over police them for their drug use, and they let drugs flood into, which is a good point that we can talk about maybe next, is how they let the drugs come into their communities. But when talking about the intended the end goal of this war on drugs, I definitely think, in my opinion, that absolutely that the intended result for this was to subjugate these communities so that these people can stay in power?
I think you guys bring up interesting points. The ACLU actually wrote an article in like 2001, kind of attesting to the fact that indeed this war on drugs and like the mass incarceration that's occurring is in fact partially due to the implicit bias and desire to uh, incarcerate African Americans and minorities. You see, like especially in America, and at that time in 2001, there were 792,000 African American men in prison, which was equivalent to the amount of slaves, the slave population in pre-Civil War America, which is crazy. And the other statistic that was shown was the American justice system was incarcerating 4 times as many African American men as was South Africa in their apartheid. So it's crazy, like how specifically we see one demographic increase in regards to their imprisonment, and also nonviolent crimes like drugs. I understand drugs for sure. You as a society would want to eradicate off the street. Generally speaking, right? Okay, maybe perhaps modern America could argue for marijuana, for example, right? And this is the discussion we're having today. But generally speaking, you as a society would not want crack cocaine, heroin, LSD on the streets, right? I'm just generally speaking. I mean, right? So, is incarceration necessarily the best way to eradicate drugs off the street? Because do you see the psychology of these individuals changing at all when they go into prison versus when they come out? Or are they better upstanding moral citizens of the United States when they come out of the prison system?
Well, I think we can look at statistics, right? Like people who go to prison once are the most likely to go to prison again, right? Like most people in prison were there before, and then they like finished their sentence, and now they're in there again. So it's pretty clear that prison does not serve as an effective rehabilitation tool, and also, like a lot of European countries that have much lower prisoner populations use harm reduction instead of imprisonment. So it's more like if somebody's doing drugs, you don't send them to prison right away. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's interesting also is we were speaking earlier about the 80s. In one of our previous seasons, we spoke about the concept of education. Remember, college education, and how minorities were getting kind of pushed under the thumb of the American system. In 1988, Congress actually passed the Higher Education Act, which essentially shut the gate for anyone that had a drug conviction to obtain any sort of federal loans or federal assistance or even work study programs for their education. So not only were you arresting, or not you, I'm sorry, the American government as a whole were arresting large masses of African Americans and minorities, but also they were blocking the path for them to get out of this cycle. So it's just crazy how you see so many different legal avenues that produce obstacles to these individuals obtaining any sort of higher actualization in America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And we're talking about the 80s and how Ronald Reagan funneled how he supported the war on drugs, and just to kind of expound upon that point is that there's many like organizations, like federal organizations and federal agencies, like the DEA, for example, like the Drug Enforcement Agency, police precincts, all these precincts and these agencies saw a dramatic uptick in their funding. Like I'm talking about like 2 or 3 times the amount of funding they were previously receiving, and the consequences of this are astounding, and we are witnessing them to this day. We see the militarization of the police force, right? Up until the 80s, these cops were like running around in their dinky little dinky little cruisers with their little batons and stuff. And then like as soon as Reagan came in, bro, he gave those like donut loving guys, like he gave them tanks, bro. He gave them actual tanks. Like he gave them tanks, and they started ramming into the houses of people in L.A. Compton. What else? Like or the DEA, for example, right? The DEA was a relatively small government organization up until the 80s when Reagan took office, right? And what happened as soon as he came in, he dramatically increased their budget. And these guys, they haven't seen that type of money before in their before in their professional career, so they kind of went ham on everybody. And that allowed them to, like you were saying, right, their school to prison pipeline, they're led into schools, and just general the persecution of Black and brown communities in this country.
And I would say he effectively militarized the police or the DEA. And I remember, like, because I personally have never gone through anything like this, but something that I can think of is the first scene of. Have you guys ever watched the movie Straight Outta Compton, the NWA based movie? The first scene, man, they got a tank going through the house, bro. I was like, what the hell? It's But going back to the HEA, the Higher Education Act, just to put it in context for you, if an individual is arrested and convicted of a crime, a non-offensive crime, just drug possession, they can't obtain any sort of financial aid, right, from the government. However, let me give you some context. If you were a murderer in America, a rapist in America, or if you were to bomb or burn a nursery or a federal building, you could still receive financial aid in America. So you could literally be smoking weed in the comfort of your own home, and then all of a sudden the police show up, and your opportunities for education in America go from the already minute amount that it was as a minority down to 0.0001.
So I know our conversation kind of went towards the criminal justice system, right? And I think one point I want to touch on before we get to that is how, on one hand, the United States government was enforcing these, very harsh policies on drugs, and trying to, subjugate these communities. And on the other hand, they were actually funneling the drugs into the same communities that they were policing. So actually, in the 80s, when Reagan was president, you know how the U.S. has their regime change wars every couple of years. Like they just go in and they feel like one country is a threat to their democracy, quote unquote. And they go in and then they plant another guy in there. This happened so many times. Look at Algeria. Look at Cuba, or not Cuba, actually. Cuba, they tried so many times. They tried to kill my man Fidel Castro 86 times. None of it worked. It didn't work a single time.
Hey, Viva Castro.
Yeah, so what I was saying is that in the 80s, they were trying to get rid of the Nicaraguan government, and they had these they were funding, or the opposition group to the Nicaraguan government. They were called the Contras, right? And the way that they were funding them was through the trade. They supported their trade of crack cocaine. And guess where that crack cocaine ended up? I know, Ali, you mentioned this before, that Florida was one of the worst hit spots in the country. It ended up in Florida. They flew their planes. They didn't drive their planes. They flew their planes over Florida, and they would drop them, and went all the way from Florida. And you guys ever heard of Rick Ross?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not that's the rapper Rick Ross. Guess who was named
not
after?
The rapper.
Not the rapper.
Okay.
Not the rapper.
I thought you were talking about Rose, bro.
No, the rapper is actually named after one of the most infamous drug dealers in the entire country. His name was Highway Ricky Ross. Rick Ross, actually, fun fact, he was actually a jail guard before he became a rapper. I'm serious.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I never would have guessed.
Yeah. So So what happened was this guy Ricky Ross, he moved exorbitant amounts of cocaine, like mind-blowing amounts of cocaine. And what happened was that, when they would take the cocaine from Nicaragua and they would give it to him and he would run it everywhere throughout the entire country. His web was extensive. So it hit communities like, Los Angeles, Chicago, random communities anywhere, like anywhere in the United States. Like it would go there and it would devastate those communities because, again, crack cocaine is a very addictive drug, and we talk about the Just Say No program and this and that, but it's actually a very harmful drug. It's not anything to be scoffed at. So basically, what happened with Rick Ross is that he had one of the most extensive drug dealing empires in the entire country, and he had his roots, growing into different places, different cities.
Was it called Maybach Music?
Oh man. And then these. So basically, like if you trying to see how corrupt this entire system is right. On one hand, they're persecuting these communities, and on the other hand, they're funneling drugs into them also. And they lied about this. And the guy that uncovered this, his name is Gary Webb, right? And apparently, after he revealed this information, he was discredited by all of his former employers, by his friends and family, and then he actually committed suicide, guys. Do you know that?
With two gunshots to the back of the head.
2 gunshot wounds. Yeah.
What?
Oh man, yeah.
Committed suicide like Jeffrey Epstein.
Bro, they got just a little off topic, but they got a Jeffrey Epstein show now on Hulu.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, it's pretty dark.
I think it's on Netflix, if I'm not mistaken.
No, bro, it's on Hulu.
I think it's on Netflix, bro.
I got halfway through an episode and I switched it to Brooklyn Nine-Nine. But anyway,
Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Support
anyway,
cops.
back to policing and
back to policing. Yeah, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. There we go.
That was a good segue.
Don't you love how there's so many like propaganda shows out there? Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I remember as a kid watching Rush Hour, and Chris Tucker always finishes every movie, and he's like, he like rejects an offer from somewhere else. He's like, nah, I'm LAPD, And now that I grow up, like I realize, whoa, LAPD are like fascists out there, man. I just this morning, I woke up and I saw a video of LAPD beating this guy in a wheelchair, and they broke his wheelchair and arrested him. And I was like, man.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
I saw that. Oh my god, dude, that was terrible.
It was a gang of them too,
bro. They took him they dragged him out of his wheelchair, bro.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the good thing about talking about this topic in the present day is that like there's basically all the evidence you ever need that the policing system is corrupt and bad and not meant to actually serve people is like out there. Like you can just go and scroll through Twitter threads for like hours and just watch instances of police brutality after police brutality. It's a lot.
Actually, one of my favorite Twitter threads is cops being bullied by protesters. I think I showed this to you, man. It was the most funny thing. It's the funniest things I've ever seen, bro. Like they're just bullying them incessantly, bro. It's hilarious. But like, yeah, I mean, one of the consequences of the drug war, we brought this up periodically, is the problem of mass incarceration. And, a lot of people don't realize politicians that are looked at in a generally positive light nowadays, example like Bill Clinton, or even more topical for today's circumstances, Joe Biden, they're looked at in a generally positive light by everyone. People don't know this, or people don't realize that these two individuals were responsible for writing some of the most destructive legislation in American history. Joe Biden is one of the authors of the crime bill that is responsible for skyrocketing the prison population of Black and brown people in this country. Bill Clinton also is he's responsible for the 3 strikes and you're out rule, or is when you go to jail 3 times and that's it, you're done. You stay in there for like a really really long time. So he's responsible for that, and a lot of people don't realize this, that they may not go for the same policies as they once did before, but you can't sit here and claim that they're going to be good for the communities that they have harmed so much to begin with. And these guys have come from a time where you literally could not be successful in politics without having a hard crime stance, basically.
Oh yeah, because it's very linear, like, right, the timeline. So after Reagan and Bush Senior, the Democrats wanted to take back the presidency, and despite being Democrats, right, like in the scale of American politics, the more leftward party, the one that's supposed to be looking out for minorities, they were always Bill Clinton during the 1992 election season. He was always like, oh yeah, I mean, you can say a lot of things about me, but you can never say that I'm not incredibly hard on crime. I'm tough on crime. They couldn't be outdone by Republicans, and they had to keep their own credentials up. So it's definitely a bipartisan view over there. It's not one party that's done this worse. Like, it was started by the Republicans, but the Democrats did nothing across their 2 presidencies since to stem that tide of imprisoning minorities for drug offenses.
So how do we see the effect of that in modern society, and also like how does modern society perceive drugs? Like how do the general population perceive drugs? And we see, for example, just a modern example, a recent one is like marijuana. Like, we see the legalization of recreational use of marijuana. I mean, medical use is almost across the entire United States, if I'm not mistaken. And recreational marijuana usage is found in some states as well. I think there's a movement towards like recreational use of drugs from the frame of, if I'm doing it and it's not necessarily hurting other people, then it's okay. Correct me if I'm mistaken, but what are some of your thoughts on that?
No, I mean, a lot of that came back when people from our generation and the generation before us kind of realized that the government, like, saying all this stuff about marijuana for so long was like absolute BS. Excuse my language. Like, none of it was right. Like, marijuana is probably way less dangerous than even tobacco or alcohol for like everyday use and societal and its societal impacts, right? I mean,
especially when it comes to alcohol, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have a alcoholic epidemic in this country, and people don't recognize that.
Right, but it's ridiculous in that there are so many states now that are legalizing recreational marijuana. Right, it's getting like popular, and they're legalizing it, and a lot of the states, in fact, maybe even all of the states that have legalized recreational marijuana, unless I'm mistaken, didn't do anything about people who were in jail already in that state for drug offenses. So in a state like Colorado, where there's like where marijuana, recreational usage of marijuana has been legal now for 8 years, and you'll find like weed shops on every street corner. You will still have people in jail for drug offenses for like selling marijuana, which is absolutely ridiculous. So I mean, even though now popular opinion is turning, the legalization of it is not being done in a just manner, and it's not being done in a way that empowers people who were hurt most by the policies, right? Like, I think across in one of the states that legalized it, there are no black-owned marijuana businesses whatsoever.
And
it's all white people.
And that's also because that they're not allowed to open them or run them legally, because they have a previous conviction on the record. So what's going on here?
It's like,
what
hey,
the
these people are the ones who are qualified to do it, man. Like,
exactly. So then you have like these rich venture capitalist dudes that come in, and I mean, again, it's like the economic system that we live under, which is capitalism, right? It's primed for this sort of exploitation.
Like Dan, what's his name? Dan Bilzerian or whatever his name is. Dude does a whole like recreational THC and marijuana. You know what I'm talking about?
I mean, yeah, there's like multiple like rich white guys, like they just come in, they have like influx of capital already from either generational or they've come into it somehow, and they're there and they're taking away the opportunity from these African American and Latino and people of color that can operate these business establishments legally, and they're not and they're making millions of dollars off of them when there's a number of nonviolent drug offenders in prison.
yeah, they use their capital to monopolize the market, right? And that ends up being not fair for people who don't have that capital coming in.
We're seeing like a general change in the attitude of when it comes to drugs. So like, what do you think? Like, I guess we'll go around in a circle. I mean, like, what do you think is like a good way? Because I know, like, me and Ali, we've had this discussion before about like if drugs should be legal or not legal, or like what the ramifications of that are. Like, what do you think? Because we know that we've discussed, right, that drugs, like especially marijuana, and they've been drilled into our brains that they're that they're dangerous and this and that, just because they wanted to scare people from doing that, or othering the people that engaged in that act. So what do you think, given that fact in mind, keeping that in mind, like what do you guys think is a good solution for this problem, like, or this issue of drugs, the war on drugs, over that sort of thing? Like, what do you think are some good solutions to that?
Well, I guess I'll take a stab at it. So you have to look at it from the perspective of just because societal's morals and ethics are changing in regards to this, doesn't necessarily, just because something's progressive doesn't mean it's actually progress. But just because something is progressive doesn't necessarily mean it's progress. So in regards to drugs, let's say you do start with marijuana. Okay, cool. You started marijuana. Where does this necessarily end in a larger scope of things? We have an opioid epidemic, right, in Ohio. We have cocaine still an issue, heroin still an issue, LSD still an issue, marijuana. I'm gonna be honest with you, marijuana, even from a medical perspective, we don't even know the full effects of marijuana. We are seeing earlier signs of onset Alzheimer within patients that use marijuana as teenagers. We are seeing, memory loss. We are seeing some effects on the brain, but there's nothing concrete because we don't have, many research labs doing studies on marijuana per se. And just to clarify, my own thought process in regards to this were to be, if someone were to pay or give you grant money to study marijuana, it most likely wouldn't be a government grant. It would probably be a third-party grant with some already implicit bias in regards to the results that they want. If you've ever actually done research in a lab, I'm not saying every lab does this, but some labs they might do 50 or 60 trials of a specific experiment or a specific research experiment in order to obtain the results that they want, and then publish that result. And obtain that same result a few times just to make it seem like you've obtained a result a multitude of times and then run with it. So I'm just saying I would be cautious in regards to championing marijuana usage in America because we don't know the full effects of it. And to simply say that yes, the American government's perception of it is completely negative is valid. But then to take that and use it as like a liberal grenade and throw it and say marijuana is now, like not a big deal at all. There's no harmful effects, X, Y, and Z. It's like, bro, where's your evidence to support that claim as well?
So I'm going to take a stance that's completely opposite of yours. Hey. I'm going to say something. I'm going to I'm going to say something at the risk of being canceled, and then I'm going to explain why I said it. I'm going to say this knowing full well that I could be canceled by some people, including you, Ali, bro.
I don't cancel anyone, bro. I ain't a part of that cancel culture, right? I'm not a YouTuber.
This goes on YouTube, man. What do you think you're doing?
Remember that Omar Suleiman tweet about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not canceling anyone?
People
That
were
became
so
a meme.
mad about that.
Yeah, anyways. So this is what I think is a correct solution for this problem, right? This is what I'm going to say. Legalize all drugs. All drugs. Every single drug that there is under the book, legalize it. Why? Okay? I'm going to tell you some reasons why. I agree with you on the fact that when you said that we don't know, I'm not going to say that, doing drugs is good for you. That's simply not the fact. But the thing is that people are going to get drugs, whether they're legal or not. And you said we have the opioid epidemic, all this stuff. So if you legalize all drugs, first of all, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be limiting the cartels and this illegal, running of drugs, which is already, harmful to so many individuals. Like people are losing their lives to illegal drug running. Okay, that's number one. Number two is that people who are already addicted to drugs, they can go ahead and seek help without fear of being arrested or, losing their livelihood, or they can seek the proper channels of for treatment. For example, there's a lot of European countries where people who are addicted to heroin go into a clinic and they're administered a heroin shot with a clean needle so that they don't get AIDS.
Ooh, which European countries is this?
I can't recall off the top of my head, but I'll hit you up later. Right. Oh man, yeah, but so that just that one small result of legalizing heroin, for example, right, reduces AIDS because people are using clean needles. It reduces the number of overdoses because people will not misdose or die of an overdose death. And we see that in this country, the opioid epidemic and people dying of overdoses is so common. It's scary, right? So if you legalize drugs, right? If you legalize this and that, and you put in common sense legislation when it comes to public health, right? This is what it comes under, right? Public health. Drugs is a public health concern. You're not accomplishing anything by making it illegal, right? And when I say legalize, a lot of people what they think when I say that is, oh yeah, all drugs are okay. Go ahead and take all the drugs. No, what I'm saying is that when you make them not illegal, when you legalize them, right, is you're providing channels and avenues for people to seek the help that they need. People who are already on drugs can seek the help that they need without fear of, incarceration or being arrested or anything like that.
So I think you. Oh, my bad. You want to hop on?
No, go for it. My view is pretty similar to Ibrahim's. Just yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to cancel both of you. No, I'm playing with you. So I think you brought up a good point in that you see that no matter what these people do, if they do genuinely want to come out and ask for help, the version of help that the American system provides is getting incarcerated, right? For 10 plus years for possession or consumption or whatever it may be. I disagree with the point that drugs should be made legal. I think that's a very similar argument to Americans when they wanted the alcohol to be made legal again. It's like, oh, well, people are going to smuggle in alcohol again, so there's no point in making it illegal, right? Because we saw illegal alcohol trades, right? We saw smuggling of alcohol when alcohol was made illegal, correct? You would still argue, I would assume that you would still argue that alcohol should be made illegal.
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, I'm positioning this question, yeah.
All right.
No, I would say that alcohol should also be legal because in the 1920s when it was prohibited, moonshining and
Brother, is this
illegal
fatwa?
alcohol running. I'm not saying I'm not advocating for the consumption
Brother,
of
is this the
alcohol.
fatwa?
No, I'm not advocating for the consumption of alcohol. What I'm saying is that it's going to happen from people anyways. But it's already, in my opinion, alcohol is more harmful to society than marijuana.
Okay, so I agree. I personally agree with you on that. My other topic was that rather than focus on making the drugs legal, why not focus on revamping the system? In the sense that we offer, instead of offering massive jail time or massive incarceration rates, we offer some sort of therapy or some sort of rehabilitation for these individuals.
But the thing I think what we disagree on over here is what it entails when you say legalize all drugs, right?
No, not
When
all
I
drugs,
say
as you mentioned previously.
no,
It's not all
well,
drugs, right?
I'm advocating for that, right? But what I think our disagreement is on is what the meaning, what it entails, right? What I'm saying is that you just said make massive changes to the system that we're in right now, right? I think that massive change, a minor step of that massive change that needs to happen, of that systemic change that needs to happen, is to legalize those drugs because it removes the stigma from those drugs. See what I'm saying? Like if you say heroin right now, right? If you're caught with an ounce of heroin on you, you could do massive jail time, right? So
And
if
would
you
you
legalize,
sorry, go ahead.
go
Sorry.
ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
No, let's not go ahead, Fish. I shouldn't have interrupted.
No. So when you if you do get caught right if you do get caught in a system where it's not illegal, right? Instead of doing jail time and then coming back out and going back to it, it's not illegal anymore, right? So you don't have to do that jail time, and instead you have better public health measures that are in place that can allow you to either if you're using that drug, right, to allow you to get off of it, or it would allow you, if you're dealing that drug, it would allow you a path to exit that life. You know what I'm saying? And again, I know we discussed this a little bit before when we talked about how educational opportunities are not afforded to people who get caught using drugs. So I feel like just a small step in rectifying the effects of the war on drugs would be to legalize it, all drugs.
You have to understand. Sorry, Talha, if you want to hop in, bro. Bismillah.
Go for it.
You have to understand like the long-term ramifications of legalizing certain drugs, within your society. For example, small example, middle school teacher chilling at home, smokes a bowl. It's legal. Smokes
End
a
the
bowl.
story.
No. Smokes a bowl.
Uh-huh.
Goes and holds afternoon tutoring sessions.
Mm-hmm.
Bruh.
But this is
that teacher high as a kite, dude. and they're conducting this tutoring session. Or hypothetically, a medical physician or a nurse or an EMT or a construction engineer. Dude, you're dealing with people's mental capacity here. You understand what I'm saying?
I have a good counter argument to that.
That's a moot point though. Like alcohol is legal in America, and like
I'm not.
neurosurgeons don't show up for work drunk. Like
No, like you're saying, right? If you're saying that, if you're saying that it would affect critical jobs, right? Just like you cannot drive under the influence, I'm pretty sure that you can't do surgery under the influence or just work in general under the influence.
No,
right?
I understand that.
Like obviously, there's going to be like laws and like things that are there to prevent that in place. I'm just saying that if you, in general, destigmatize these things, right, and you allow people to get help from these things.
I mean, you can destigmatize it without making them legal.
No, that's the thing. If they're illegal, then they're stigmatized. Dude, anything. Go ahead.
Are you saying the fact that they're illegal is the reason why they're destigmatized, or the fact that Nancy Reagan for like the last 20 plus years has been propagating? I mean, she's dead now, but her whole movement and her whole legacy was propagating this "just say no," and therefore you and I and the hundreds of thousands of millions of kids have grown up with this conscious mentality that drugs are an evil, despicable thing from the devil, I'm just saying essentially this is what we've been grown to believe. You can make something illegal, right? And if something is illegal, then it is implicitly bad, correct? It's harmful for society, right? From a political science point of view. There's a reason why we make something illegal, correct?
Okay.
Yes or no? We're running a red light, for example.
Okay.
Illegal, right? Why?
Yeah. Because it could injure someone else.
Because logic dictates that, you would injure someone else.
Uh-huh.
Drugs, why are they illegal?
What was that?
Why are drugs illegal?
Why are drugs illegal?
I'm not saying that the legal ramifications of you getting locked up for 50 years and never seeing your family is correct. But I'm saying that the point that them being illegal is justified.
Okay, but
I mean, no, you can't just say that because something is a law, it makes sense for it to be illegal, right? Like, you're using kind of circular logic over there, where you're saying that something is, bad for you because it's illegal, because it's bad for you. It's just
that's the American system, right?
Well, I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? Because if there's no way to uphold that in court, right? That's why you can have something like in the U.S. system, for example, you can be enslaved if you've done it, to pay as a punishment for doing something bad. That doesn't make it okay, right? It doesn't make it morally good. Like the 13th Amendment says that you can use slavery as a punishment for doing something bad, and that's why private prisons use essentially a form of slavery where they pay pennies on hours of manual labor, and it doesn't make it okay. So that's I'm just saying your assumption over there is flawed, probably.
So you would say that's not okay?
What's up?
You would say that's not okay? If individuals bypass the social contract or
well, I mean, you're getting into ethics over there, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, okay. So then, what makes?
I think this conversation does. I apologize. Sorry. Go ahead.
No. Okay. But I mean, obviously, this isn't a problem in the U.S. yet. But it's like, okay, many European countries have banned the burqa, right? And is that because it's bad for you? Like, that's not a point that you can necessarily make.
So I think like a more general way to state what I'm just trying to read. Don't let me put words in your mouth, Talha, but like I think what you're maybe trying to get at, correct me if I'm wrong, is that when Ali, you were saying that, if something is detrimental to society, then it should be legal, right? But using that ideology or that methodology, you're saying that laws determine what is good and moral in a society. And we can see that, okay, for example, right, if we go back to the 70s, right, I remember we mentioned this at the beginning of our talk, right, when we started talking about how LSD was not illegal in the 70s. Why was it legal then, and then why did they change it immediately? Right, you know what I'm saying? They didn't change it because they thought it was more harmful to society. They changed it for other reasons, right? And that we discussed, right? Or the 13th Amendment, for example, that's a law, but that doesn't mean that law is good. It's basically saying that slavery is legal. So what I think maybe the point that I'm trying to make is that laws don't necessarily determine what's good in society or what's harming society. Some of the laws.
That's a much larger, as Talha mentioned, that's a much larger discussion about like groupthink within society and how you, morals and ethics of society and how you dive into the formation of laws based on the general consciousness of society. But I understand your points, and I would agree with you on some of them. Actually, most of them. It's just for me the one big thing about making drugs legal. That's everything else for the most part I agree. You have to understand that I'm not like trying to like pick a fight or like I'm trying to inshallah we're trying to see like what would perhaps be best for society, and obviously we're in no position to implement those, but yeah,
we do live in a society. It's not
true.
Dude, that's crazy, bro.
Yeah. So
live in a society.
Quarantine got me gaming, bro.
But so I would agree. Go ahead.
if we're having a discussion on society, falls into culture. So I think we can save that probably for next week.
Thank you for tuning in to episode 1 of the 5th season of the 4th podcast. You can help us grow by giving us a follow on Instagram at the4th.productions and Twitter at the4th_prod, PROD. As of now, we hope you have a great rest of the day.